Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abigail Murray. I'm the Enterprise Development Associate at the IDZ. A warm word of welcome to you all. We are honored to host you and to entice you to join in the development journey of the IDZ. Today is our 5th TOGASI, and it becomes more and more interesting as this is where we start bringing the industry home. The IDZ sent an invitation inviting businesses who want to feature their businesses in the TOGASI series. We've had 20 responses, and then we had to choose from the replies we received. We looked at various aspects in arriving at the 4 businesses featured today. And in TOGASI 6, we will feature businesses in the technical field, more in fabrication, etc. It's interesting days because now we get to see what Saldanha has in terms of small business. We get to see the pride and the heart of the business people. We get to reach potential entrepreneurs, possible mentors, thought leaders who will identify and drive initiatives with the IDZ to bring about mutual objectives of enterprise development, skills development, job creation, poverty alleviation, economic empowerment, world-class infrastructure developments, youth and women advancement by means of the envisaged industrial development zone. Enterprise development has an executive that heads up the unit, primarily responsible for commercial aspects in the IDZ, and I would like to introduce Mr. Moketi Marumo, who will say a few words before we dig into today's main event. Thank you.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Abigail has already indicated, I joined the IDZ this year, March, as the head of executive for commercial and enterprise development. Just a few words without wasting time. I would like to say that SBIDZ has identified same with skills development, enterprise development as a strategic key area in ensuring that while we build this world-class infrastructure, we bring along the local community and the local businesses into the value chain of this oil and gas industry that we're targeting. Today, what we have done, we have come up with a strategic framework which is looking at about 3 key area programs. And those 3 programs are focusing on information, focusing on funding and long-term support programs. And just to indicate that, with TOGASI, if one looks at those particular 3 programs that we have identified in our strategic framework, which will fall under an information-based program. To date, that particular program has launched a number of initiatives. And one of those initiatives is the establishment of the Business Forum, which is geared towards creating collaboration with the local organizations which are representing small and medium enterprises in the area. And the second initiative that we've already done is Supplier Awareness Day that we have already hosted into the area. And then obviously the TOGASI services that we are hosting to ensure that while we're moving through this particular journey, we bring along local businesses and at the same time to ensure that they understand the industry that we're focusing on. So with those few words, I would not want to waste time but to introduce Benedicta Mahlangu, who's our guest speaker and our sector specialist. Benedicta.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And for those who have been sitting here since 9 o'clock, just being patient that we started a bit later on, it's actually indicative of when you have zones like the IDZ. Sometimes things go wrong, but you've got to find a way to fix it and move forward because business must continue. And so that's just, we're having some technical difficulties. For those who are joining us for the first time, my name is Benedicta Mahlangu, and I'm the executive for the Ease of Doing Business at the Salwana Bay IDZ. Just a bit of background. For those who've come every single week, I know they get to hear about this, but it is in the interests of the people meeting me for the first time that my background is in chemical engineering. I studied in Cape Town as well as in Germany. I often mention that it was during my studies in Germany that I realized the potential there is out there with regards to engineering and the world of possibilities that far outstretched what I was possibly exposed to prior to going there. And it is from this learning and this exposure that I also have a passion to also, wherever I can, enlighten and share my experiences for those who possibly also could use that in order to grow themselves. I've spent 7 years offshore working in the oil and gas exploration, which is how I've been able to conduct these TOGASI series, just to explain how it works. For some people, it's not that straightforward, and it's been a pleasure to be able to share that information and knowledge with the experience from working offshore, living at sea, as well as some of the maritime and marine exposure in working in shipping as well. I've joined the IDZ in January this year, and basically the Ease of Doing Business is a combination of the experience of both the oil and gas and marine, which is what our cluster focuses on. And I'm born and raised in Durban. I love the sea, I love the ocean, and hence my career path has basically led me anything that had to do with water, which is marine, maritime, as well as oil and gas later on. Again, just to refresh our minds with the journey we have traveled thus far. We started out introducing the oil and gas, giving just the background of how one gets from crude oil to petrol in our cars or plastic bottles, and we looked also at how these equipment, the rigs, impact actually the fact that we eventually have those everyday use products. We looked at components of the offshore industry, and just to mention that, you will see in the videos that we showed today how the way that the program was designed was to give the background information, which then today makes it easier to understand where all these components that I spoke of and the kind of work that takes place and the safety considerations actually fits in when you come into the zones such as Salwana Bay IDZ. So we did look at the kind of jobs you can find in Series 3. I shared some experiences with working offshore, and so we find ourselves today looking at the repair work and fabrication sort of work one would potentially find in the zone. But it's kind of a mixture, as Abby has also mentioned. We did send out a notification asking companies to participate. We did have a really great response, and we selected the ones that we felt would be best to demonstrate some of the key topics to cover in a way that inspires other business people and also allows for people to see that within our West Coast community exists those expertise already, and it's just a matter of building that and growing those businesses. The topics of TOGASI 5 and 6 actually fall then into the oil and gas and marine value chain. So all that I've spoken about thus far was very much around the technicalities of working offshore, and now I'm bringing it closer into the zone and what takes place there. And just very briefly, again, just to reiterate, we are primarily focusing on the upstream part of the chain. You get upstream, midstream, and downstream with regards to the oil and gas industry, and we're focusing on servicing the upstream customers. And in that value chain, you will have engineering-based services, manufacturing and equipment supply. You'll have construction and maintenance, and you'll have operation support services, which encompass a very long variety of opportunities also that definitely can be found in terms of our local enterprise development programs. Also to highlight how our strategy from investor attraction and promotion fits in with the kind of key areas we speak of in terms of employment. We have then fabrication and construction, as I've already mentioned, exploration and production equipment that is coming in to be serviced. You'd have marine and subsea equipment, and then you start getting into logistics and the ancillary services. Those probably I will get more into detail in TOGASI 6 as well, but just for the sake of time and in this series, we're covering the first three on your right with regards to the topics of today. Just to kind of zoom in on some of them. So MOU is the Memorandum of Understanding. It is mobile offshore units. And that's a terminology that's used. So I thought I'd bring that in at this point so that people start using the correct terminology, because when investors come, you understand what they refer to. And what it is that when you just say a rig, you're only referring to a specific type of structure. But they are actually grouped under mobile offshore units. And you get mobile offshore drilling units, which are the ones used for drilling, but you also have units like the supply vessels, your barges, which also form part of the offshore environment, and so they are termed MOUs. And within our zone, you would have work for fabrication and construction, which has to do with shipbuilding, the subsea modules that we discussed in TOGASI 2 topside, as well as jackets. These equipment or structures are huge, and there's a lot of work around it, from electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic, steel manufacture. You can find off this one particular equipment that needs construction that there's a lot of input in various technical abilities, which we are hoping to find within with the community. Then, so you've got on the one hand the fabrication and construction, so this is building from scratch, but then you also have customers who are coming in there for regular maintenance, and also sometimes you would find emergency repairs. So then you start getting into looking at, so again, MOU repairs. Some of it is for recertification, because a lot of the equipment or the MOUs offshore, how they also get their contracts awarded or they remain competitive in terms of bidding for projects is through their certification. There's almost a class ranking of where you are depending on what the capability of that piece of equipment can do. So that's a very key offering that is necessary in a zone such as ourselves. Then we've got also OEM equipment, which is, this is equipment which is basically repaired, but they form part of another kind of structure, such as your thrusters, your engines. They're a component, but they actually also probably fall within the construction of a rig or a vessel. And then, of course, with all this work, because it's heights and sort of thing, I just also drew in that, scaffolding and rope access is also a very key kind of necessity to have throughout any of the work that actually takes place in the zone. So just to kind of throw some ideas of where opportunities may lie within the sector. So my background is offshore and maritime, as I've mentioned, but I would actually like to have utilized businesses who have more experience than myself in the kind of work that takes place in the zone. And so we have asked some businesses to allow us to film them and to tell us more about what their businesses do and how they would be part of the chain that we are working in. And so without further ado, I would start off with our MedSafe.
My name is Estelle Purdy. I'm the founder and owner of MedSafe. MedSafe is an occupational health company. We were established in 1989 when a big company came to the West Coast. We then were awarded a tender. We established on their site and we lost the contract 7 years later. From there, I went and I did various other things and I restarted again. I reopened MedSafe because I'm just so passionate about it. I couldn't not do occupational health. That is who I am. So we started very, very small in a tiny, in a one bedroom, which we rented in a house that was converted into offices. I worked myself for 5 to 6 months, all alone. After that, I got a little bit busier. I then employed someone on part-time basis only. She worked for me for half days. And we grew from there, and it was amazing how we just exploded. And after about a year or so, we moved to the industrial area. We were in an office just across the road from where we are now for 2 to 3 years. And then I was told clearly by God, you must move now. You must find bigger premises, which I did, which is where we are now. And it just exploded from there. It just took off. So it is such an honor for me and such a pleasure for me to be delivering these services because we are so passionate about occupational health. And we deliver the services to industry in a whole, no matter how big or how small you are. We are there to service you and to help you and to help you get your occupational health up to a standard where it should be. In Saldanha, we are positioned in the industrial zone directly opposite the harbour. We also have an office in Pardon Island, also directly across from Cape Town Harbour, which is very, very nice for the oil and gas industry and ship repair. And then we have a third office outside Cape Town International Airport. It is ideal to do medical examination, to go through this whole process before you employ someone, because you want to know that the person you employ is fit to do a specific job that is employed for in that specific industry. Otherwise, you might end up with an employee who cannot do what he's supposed to do, and he cannot be exposed to what he is going to be exposed to. So it's very important that you do this prior to employment. Some people should be done every 6 months, depending on exposure. This whole process is risk-driven. That is why one does an occupational health risk profile of the company to see what they are exposed to. You also get the occupational hygiene survey report, which is done by an occupational hygienist. You combine these two as well as the main job specifications to see what they do, and then you evaluate your findings against all these. Then you can see, is this guy fit for his work or not, or his specific job that he's doing or not. And then you monitor this on an annual basis, or as I've said, 6 monthly, sometimes 2 yearly, depending on what they do and what they're exposed to. But very important to do this, because throughout this process, you monitor your employee's health status. And what we do, our responsibility towards you as employer, is to inform you, this guy's spirometry, his lung function test, there's a deviation between last year and now. We know he's exposed to X, Y, and Z. Therefore, you need to see, does he wear his PPE? Do you supply PPE? Number one. And number two, is it the correct PPE for his exposure? And number three, is he compliant? So this is where we really come in. We bring this to you and we say, this is what your employee's health status is all about, and this is what you can do from your side to protect him in the workplace and also to protect you from legislation, possible legislation and lawsuits. Very, very, very interesting field, very nice field. And one last thing you should do, when an employee leaves your employ, you must do another medical examination. And the reason for that is an exit medical examination. The reason for that is you can compare his exit medical examination, the findings, against his pre-employment and his annuals to see whether in fact there is deviation or not, whether in fact he did pick up an occupational disease in the workplace or not. This protects the employee as well as you as the employer against, again, possible legislation. The last thing you need as an employer is for someone to come and say, I got noise-induced hearing loss while I worked for you. If you have a pre-employment medical, annual medicals, as well as an exit, you can say, this is not the case. Our vision is huge. We would love to have a 24-hour occupational health center erected on the West Coast in the industrial business zone opposite the harbour in order to service the oil and gas industry and industry as a whole. MedSafe has positioned itself over the last couple of years to get ready for the development in our area by registering on the Western Cape Supplier Database, amongst others, the Saldanha Bay IDZ Supplier Development Database. We've also attained and maintained the Quality Management System ISO 9001-2008. We registered with the Board of Healthcare Funders, South African Society of Occupational Health Nursing Practitioners, amongst others. We are BBBE certified. So we are getting ready and we are there and we are maintaining all these systems. So this is our vision and our dream, to have this 24-hour occupational health center where we can even do minor injuries on duty. So people can come for primary health care, they can come for treatment of minor injuries, and they can go back to work if they have to.
So I have mentioned in other, in various series actually, the importance of safety whilst working offshore, and therefore I felt important to find someone in the community who is involved in that aspect, and just to give of what the services they offer, and to spark that there's obviously a whole lot more that can come off medical offerings and safety. And just to highlight again, for the oil and gas industry specific, one finds the basic offshore survival. Although these training platforms are international accredited, some of them, like for example ISO, you can start there and then slowly build yourself up to getting past it if necessary. There are certain organizations like Bureau Veritas who give this accreditation. And the whole thing with being certified and having the certifications is that it makes you think of how your business is running and that the service you are offering is of quality standard. There's risk attached to it, and almost when someone comes into the zone and they know they're getting a service, for example, from MedSafe, they can feel secure that MedSafe will actually treat whatever the condition is in the correct manner. Our next company that we looked into, I needed to find something that has almost it's relevant to a variety of work that takes place within a zone. So we approached Sept, who offer electrical appliance and services, and the thing with the work that takes place for equipment, any manufacturing site, you have almost three components where you need electrical appliances and power and service offerings. You also need, I will just cover after the video as well, just that you have pneumatic and hydraulic workings. And these can be found in the cranes that drive, the cranes along the quay, the port, in a workshop that you're working in, offshore on the actual installations, even in your small offices, if you have just a repair workshop. So this is the kind of offerings that actually carries throughout the value chain. And that's also quite nice to highlight, to say that offering services with regards to electrical, pneumatic and hydraulics actually gives you a much wider service offering than you perhaps might find.
I'm a